My name is Mary, and this is the story of the day I finally realized I had never truly belonged in my own family. I arrived at my sister Ellie's wedding with a simple goal: to celebrate, smile for a few pictures, and play the role of the kind older sister, just like I always had. The wedding took place at a lakeside resort in Vermont, famous for its flower-filled gardens and luxurious banquet halls with soaring glass ceilings. As soon as my car pulled up to the main entrance, a staff member in a black uniform stepped forward to open the door. I took a deep breath, smoothed down the wine-colored dress, the only one I felt matched the elegance of the event, and stepped inside with a polite smile. I wasn't trying to draw attention or steal anyone's spotlight. This was Ellie's special day, and I had long accepted that I wasn't the favorite child. But I hadn't expected them to be quite so cold. As I entered the main hall, a receptionist greeted me with a bright smile. "Your name?" "Mary Evans," I replied softly. Her smile faded slightly. I noticed the hesitation in her perfectly done-up expression. She flipped through the guest list a bit faster than usual, then suddenly stopped. Her eyes narrowed slightly before she looked up. "Ah, here it is. You've been placed in the hallway section." I blinked. "Sorry, where?" "Just outside the banquet hall, near the coat check," she said, attempting to sound casual. I glanced at the seating chart nearby. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Evans, were placed at the head table. Ellie's close friends and her fiancé's coworkers all had assigned seats inside beneath the sparkling chandeliers. And me. I couldn't find my name anywhere. "Maybe there's been a mistake," I said, trying to stay composed. She gave a tight, uncomfortable smile. "I'm afraid not. That's the designated spot." My chest tightened. I tried to tell myself it was just a space issue. Maybe it was a last-minute oversight. But then I saw my mother standing next to Ellie, adjusting her veil. They were laughing together, like everything was perfect. I approached and tried to keep my tone even. "Mom, can I talk to you for a second?" My mother, Caroline, didn't even glance at me.
"Not now, Mary."
"Can't you see we're busy?" I bit my lip. "Just a moment." She sighed, clearly irritated, and stepped aside. Ellie stayed where she was, her smile barely concealing her smugness. "I've been seated in the hallway," I said. My mother shrugged as if it didn't matter. "We had to prioritize close family. You know that." I clenched my fists. "I am close family." She gave a soft, cold laugh. "Oh, don't be so dramatic, Mary." Ellie jumped in, her eyes gleaming. "I'm sure it was just a mix-up. Nobody meant anything by it. Weddings are chaotic." Her tone was sickly sweet, but her expression was anything but kind. I looked back at my mother, hoping for a sign of doubt. But she just sighed. "Don't ruin your sister's big day, Mary. You should be grateful you were invited." The word grateful stuck in my throat. Grateful to be treated like a stranger in my own family? Grateful to sit beside the coat rack. Before I could respond, my father Charles appeared, speaking in a low, dismissive tone. "It's just a seat, sweetheart. Don't turn it into a thing." I stood motionless. The anger wasn't loud, it was quiet, simmering cold. I gave a hollow smile and walked away without another word. They expected me to take it in silence, like I always did. But not this time. I walked slowly out of the main hall, my heels tapping lightly against the cool marble. The hallway smelled of floral arrangements and something else, something that didn't belong. Like me. In my hand was the place card. "Mary Evans, Table H, hallway section." The elegant script felt like an insult. I turned the card over, my palm damp with sweat. I had hoped, just once, that my family would treat me like one of their own. But it was clear they never had. A soft click came from behind. The door opened. "Mary?" Ellie's voice rang out casually, as if nothing had happened. I turned. She stood with her arms crossed, her veil fluttering in the breeze. Her makeup was perfect. Her smile was not. "Are you upset?" she asked, without a hint of real concern. "Because of the seating?" I let out a dry laugh. "I'm not upset.
I'm disappointed."
Ellie tilted her head, her eyes lighting up like I'd said something amusing. "You're always so sensitive."
It's just a chair, Mary.
Who even cares? I bit the inside of my cheek, steadying my voice. You know it's not about the seat. It's about how I've always been treated in this family. She shrugged. So what? You still showed up, wore the pretty dress, hoped someone would notice. She leaned in, her voice low so only I could hear. You crave their approval. It's pathetic. I looked her in the eye.
No, ella.
What's pathetic is needing to belittle someone just to feel loved. She paused, just for a second, but then brushed it off with a forced laugh. You always know how to ruin a moment. Footsteps approached. It was Mom, Caroline, with a frustrated look like she'd been pulled away from something important. I heard there's some drama out here, she said, eyes on Ellie, barely glancing at me. I took a breath.
I needed to say it.
Mom, they seated me in the hallway. I'm not some distant cousin. I'm your daughter. She furrowed her brows, then gave a stiff smile. Mary, it's not that we don't appreciate you. It's just there were limited spots. I had to focus on the people closest to Ellie. I stared. Closer than me? She answered quickly. Aunt Patty, her college roommate, the friends who helped during her illness. You've always been the independent one. I never had to worry about you. I let out a quiet laugh. It even surprised me. You never had to worry about me, and you think that justifies treating me like I don't exist? Ellie chimed in, her voice dripping with sweetness. Mary, stop it. Mom didn't mean it like that. You're overreacting. You should be grateful you were even invited. That word sliced deep. I turned to Mom, gazing at her as if I was truly seeing her for the first time. Do you even understand how grateful sounds when you've made me feel like a stranger in my own family? She said nothing.
No embrace, no touch, no apology.
A deep voice came from my left. It's just a seat, Mary. It was my father, Gregory. He stood there holding a glass, eyes glued to the floor, still the same old avoidance as always. I turned to him, speaking slowly. I don't need you to defend me, but the least you could do is look me in the eye when you speak. He looked up, confusion flickering across his face for a moment before fading again. Ellie shrugged, like I was a stubborn child ruining the grown-ups' celebration. If you're that unhappy, you can just leave. I looked at the three of them, these people I once called my family, and suddenly I realized maybe Ellie was right. I gripped my purse tighter and inhaled deeply. Something inside me didn't break from weakness, but from clarity. If they had chosen to make me feel like I didn't belong, then I wouldn't keep trying to fit in. And what was about to happen would make sure they never forgot this night. I strode down the thick, carpeted corridor, my heels muffled by the plush floor. Behind me, the music from the banquet hall continued cheerfully, laughter and clinking glasses filling the space, but it all felt like it belonged to another world. A world I had never truly been welcomed into. I stopped in a quiet corner, clutching my purse strap as if it were the only thing holding me steady. Ellie's smirk, Mom's dismissive head shake, Dad's distant silence. It all replayed in my mind like a disjointed melody. And then, a memory resurfaced, vivid and sharp, like it had happened just yesterday. 3 years ago, I returned home for Thanksgiving. It was one of the rare times Ellie wasn't around, off traveling with a new boyfriend in Portugal. The house in Albany felt strangely calm.
No loud chatter.
No lingering trace of Ellie's overpowering perfume. Mom asked me to go to my old room to find some family pictures for a memory album. I agreed, a little relieved to do something that felt meaningful, or at least involved. My room hadn't changed after all those years. The small bed near the window. The old bookshelf. High school photos, mostly of me alone. I dug through the drawer and found the photo box, but then my gaze accidentally drifted to the small drawer in Mom's vanity. I didn't know why, but I opened it. Inside lay a light brown leather journal, resting quietly. Every page was filled with my mother's handwriting, neat and graceful. I flipped it open, not thinking much, until I read the first lines. The first day Ellie went to kindergarten, she didn't cry. She turned, waved goodbye to me, and marched into class like a brave little doll. I turned the page. Ellie loves the baked pasta I make on Thursday nights. Ellie used to be afraid of thunder, but now she's much braver. Ellie's favorite birthday present was the little nurse outfit I got her when she turned 8. Page after page, year after year, it was all Ellie. Moments recorded like a secret memoir just for her. I began searching, desperately, like I was trying to prove to myself that I had once mattered too, that I had been remembered. I flipped each page, scanned every sentence. But there was nothing. Not a single word. Not a single line. Not even the name Mary. I clutched the journal so tightly my knuckles went pale. When Mom walked in, I was still sitting there, motionless on the floor, the journal wide open in my lap. "You wrote all of this about Ellie?" I asked, my voice small and cold. She glanced at the notebook and smiled faintly, as though it meant nothing. I had to remember everything so Ellie wouldn't feel forgotten. She's sensitive. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. "And what about me?" Mom looked directly at me, her gaze steady. "You've always been independent. You didn't need to be written about to be remembered." I nodded, saying nothing more. But something inside me broke. A part of my childhood. A piece of my hope. And the piece of me that had always longed for my mother's acknowledgement. That memory hit me like a wave in the elegant hallway of today's wedding. And I knew nothing had changed. I was still Mary, the daughter my mother never thought to include in her memory book. The one who didn't even deserve a real seat at her sister's wedding. A chill passed down my spine. Not from the air conditioning, but from the truth finally settling in. I sank onto the bench near the window, right beside the coat rack, exactly where they had planned for me to be. I stared at the name card in my hand, printed in golden script. Then, at my own faint reflection in the glass behind me. The wedding carried on. Sparkling lights. White flowers. Ellie's radiant smile and her extravagant dress. But I sat here, on the edge of memory, of space, of love. If this is where they believed I belonged, maybe they had never really known me at all. And for the first time, I didn't feel sorrow about that. I just felt like I was finally stepping out of the shadow they had cast over me for so many years. And I was ready to face every bit of it. I remained on that bench by the glass, my heart caught between the past and the present. Everything that had just happened, the way Ellie ridiculed me, how Mom dismissed my emotions as if they didn't count, kept playing in my mind, an endless loop. "Mary," a deep male voice startled me. I looked up. Standing in front of me was Ethan Bennett. The groom of the day stood there in a well-fitted tuxedo, his tie slightly undone, and his dark brown hair tousled, as if he'd run his fingers through it in frustration. In his hand was a champagne flute, untouched. I rose to my feet, smoothed down my dress, and gave a subtle nod.
"Ethan."
He looked at me, eyes narrowing slightly, as though he was trying to make sense of something. "Seeing you sitting here doesn't feel right," he said quietly. I let out a faint laugh. "Really? Because your family decided I wasn't worthy of a seat in the main hall." He said nothing. A thick silence settled between us. Two people who barely knew one another, but were now sharing an unexpectedly personal moment. "Mary," Ethan finally said, his voice softer. "Can I ask you something?" I met his gaze. "Go ahead." He hesitated, his grip on the stem of the glass tightening slightly. "Has Ellie ever said anything about me that seemed strange?" I tilted my head slightly. "Are you asking if I've heard her speak badly about you?" "Not just that." He reached into his inner jacket pocket and pulled out his phone, glancing at the screen before shaking his head. "It's just, lately she's been acting different. Controlling. Secretive. There are things she's hiding, and I'm starting to think something isn't right." I paused. Ellie's sharp comments at family dinners echoed in my memory. I had never spoken up, partly to avoid conflict, partly because I was so used to being overlooked. But something in Ethan's expression made it impossible to stay silent this time. "You might want to brace yourself," I said slowly, "because I don't think you truly know who Ellie is." He opened his mouth to respond, but another voice interrupted, soft, yet oddly commanding. "And if you're still uncertain, maybe your mother can help clarify things." We both turned. Celeste Bennett, Ethan's mother, stood at the far end of the hallway, holding a phone in her hand. Her eyes were locked on her son. She was the kind of woman whose presence made a room pause, not from volume, but because she carried authority effortlessly. Today, she wore an elegant navy dress, her platinum hair twisted into a sleek bun, and her gaze was piercing. She stepped closer and handed the phone to Ethan. "Look." Ethan took the device, swiping across the screen. His brows furrowed at first, then his expression shifted, confusion, followed by anger, and then something deeper.
Hurt.
Shattered. His voice cracked. She told her best friend she was training me to be the ideal husband. Said I was too predictable, and as long as she kept acting sweet around you, this house would be hers. Celeste nodded solemnly. There are also messages to her stylist. Ellie wrote that a few months after the wedding, she'd find a way to make you financially dependent. Then, everything would be hers. That's a direct quote. I looked at Ethan. His face had turned pale, his shoulders tense, like he was holding himself up against a storm. "I can't believe this," he whispered. "Mom, why do you have these messages?" Celeste glanced briefly at me before answering. "A friend of mine works at the studio where Ellie hired her stylist. They accidentally sent the backup file to my email when I rescheduled a fitting, and I read everything." Ethan sank into a chair, still gripping the phone tightly. The atmosphere around us felt frozen. I sat down beside him, saying nothing. Part of me ached for him, but another part understood. This was the moment when the lies buried beneath years of pretending finally rose to the surface. Celeste stood still for a long moment, then said gently, "Mary, thank you for not turning a blind eye." I gave a small nod. I didn't need gratitude. I just wanted the truth to be seen. And from this point on, I knew this wedding would no longer unfold according to Ellie's plan. Her grip on everything, on everyone was slipping. The air in the private conference room on the second floor of the resort was thick with tension. No one spoke after the door closed. Only the hum of the air conditioner and the faint draft from a slightly open window filled the silence. Ethan sat at the head of the table, his eyes blank. Celeste stood behind him, her hand gently placed on his shoulder, the only anchor he had. I sat slightly to the right, hands folded in my lap, trying to stay composed even though my heart pounded so loudly I thought it might echo in the room. The door opened again. Ellie walked in with my mother, Caroline, following. My mother looked puzzled. Ellie didn't. She wore her usual mask of confidence, though now there was a flicker of unease behind her eyes. "What's going on here?" Ellie asked, her voice pitched a little too high, as if she was trying to reassert control. "Why are you pulling people out of the wedding?" Ethan rose to his feet, and the look in his eyes had changed. The shock was gone. What remained was ice-cold certainty. He pulled a white envelope from the pocket of his suit jacket and set it firmly on the table. "You know what this is?" Ellie stared at it, saying nothing. "A petition to annul the marriage," he said, his voice calm but unshakable. "And in case you're wondering, I've already signed it." The room went completely still. My mother gasped, covering her mouth with one hand. Ellie took a step back, her lips pressed together. "You're joking, right?" she asked, trying to keep her tone steady. Celeste spoke then, her voice sharp as a blade. "We read all of your messages, Ellie. Every word you said about Ethan, about me, about this family. There's no denying any of it." "I didn't mean..." Ethan cut her off, his voice trembling with both pain and anger. "You called my mother a rich old woman who only knows how to write checks. You told your friend you'd have everything under control 6 months after the wedding. You said I was easy to manipulate. Just act fragile and you'll get anything you want." "Want me to keep quoting?" Ellie froze. I turned to my mother. She stood in place, face pale, as if finally seeing her daughter's real self for the first time. "They were jokes," Ellie insisted, her voice weak. "Things between friends, not serious." Celeste let out a short, bitter laugh. "And the divorce consultation you filed last month, was that a joke too?" Just then my father, Robert, entered the room. His expression was grim. I wasn't sure who had called him, but his arrival made the tension in the room even heavier. "Is this true?" he asked, looking directly at Ellie. She didn't respond. Robert turned to my mother. "Did you know about this?" Mom shook her head slowly. I didn't think Ellie was capable of something like this. You never think, he said quietly. You've never truly looked at what's happening around you. Then he turned to me, and for the first time in many years, he didn't avoid my eyes. Mary, he said.
I'm sorry.
Both Mom and I were taken aback. I had never heard him apologize, especially not to me. I've kept quiet for far too long. I let everything spiral out of control, he continued. And I know now you were right about Ellie. About everything. I didn't know how to respond. A part of me had grown so accustomed to being ignored that this acknowledgement left me speechless. Ellie snapped back into the moment. You're siding with her? She shouted, her voice rising in pitch. Your own daughter, the one you've always cherished, is being abandoned by her whole family over a few stupid texts. Ethan tightened his grip on the edge of the table. Don't call them stupid texts, Ellie. That's who you really are. You don't get it, Ellie cried, her voice trembling. I love you. I didn't want to miss out on building a secure life. What's so wrong with that? Celeste arched a brow. Is that what love looks like to you? Planning a divorce before the marriage has even started? She's lying. Ellie spun toward me, her eyes blazing. This is all your fault. You're jealous. You turned Mom against me. None of this would be happening if it weren't for you. I took a steady breath, keeping my composure. Ellie, you did this to yourself. Don't shift the blame. You've always been the outsider in this family, Ellie screamed. Always pretending to be the perfect one just to make Mom feel guilty.
What do you want?
To take everything from me? No, I said, my voice soft but firm. I just want the truth to be seen. My mother stepped forward then. She looked at Ellie for a long, painful moment. Confusion, sorrow, and finally, resignation etched on her face. Ellie, she said gently, I can't defend you anymore. Ellie froze. Her lips parted like she wanted to respond, but no words could repair what had been broken. She turned toward me, and for the first time in my life, I saw fear in her. Not fear of punishment, but fear because she knew no one was standing beside her this time. Ellie stood still in the hushed room, breathing heavily, her hands balled into fists at her sides. Her once flawless makeup had smudged around her eyes. The white wedding dress that had dazzled everyone just hours earlier now looked tight, suffocating, stripped of the glamour she had envisioned for her special day. She snapped her head in my direction, her eyes dark with fury. You always wanted to ruin me, Ellie hissed, her voice breaking. You never let me have a moment of peace.
Did you?
I didn't reply. There was nothing more to say. But Ellie didn't need a response. She lunged toward me, fury in her eyes, her steps echoing on the polished floor. I didn't flinch. I wasn't afraid. At that precise moment, a firm arm came between us.
It was Celeste.
That's enough, she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but it was sharp as a blade. Ellie froze, startled. Move, she snapped. You've created enough destruction, Celeste said calmly but firmly. If I allow you to make one more reckless decision, that's on me. Ellie stood there, panting, her eyes darting around the room, searching for an exit or an ally. But no one moved. Ethan leaned back against the table, unreadable. My father had his head bowed, his brow furrowed like he had finally accepted something painful. And my mother, the one who used to excuse every misstep Ellie made, stood still, clutching her purse strap, eyes rimmed with red. Then Ellie shoved past Celeste, her heels clattering loudly on the floor as she stormed out. Her long train swept behind her like a defiant cape as she disappeared down the corridor. I thought she'd vanish behind the door. But she didn't. She pushed open the double doors that led back into the reception hall, where soft music was still playing, where guests were laughing, clinking glasses, and taking photos amid perfect white floral arrangements. When Ellie stormed in, breath ragged, hair messy, eyes wild, everything stopped. The music faltered. Heads turned. Murmurs began, first curious, then stunned. Then came the silence. The rest of us followed her into the room. No one tried to hold her back. No one wanted to. Ellie stood in the middle of the hall, Once meant to be the shining scene of her dreams, now the backdrop of her unraveling. "You think you can humiliate me like this?" she shouted, her voice echoing beneath the crystal chandeliers. "I gave everything for today, months of preparation, every little detail perfect. And now, because of a few texts, some meaningless words, you're going to ruin me?" No one responded. Ethan stepped forward, his expression unflinching. "No one ruined you, Ellie," he said. "You did that yourself." She shook her head, sobbing now. "You love me, Ethan. I did everything for our future." Celeste stepped forward, her movements slow and purposeful. She faced Ellie with a calm, ice-edged voice. "I once wished you would be part of this family, but you never wanted to be a Bennett. You only ever wanted what we had." A hush spread through the room like a ripple across water. Guests looked at one another, some setting down their glasses, others whispering with wide eyes. Ellie scanned the room, her breathing uneven. "She made all of this up," she yelled, pointing at me. "Mary has always been jealous, always trying to drag me down. She's lived her whole life in the shadows, and now she wants to take me down with her." I stepped forward, calm and clear. My voice carried just enough for all to hear. "I don't need to bring anyone down. The truth weighs enough on its own." Ellie went quiet. The tension was taut as wire. All eyes were on her. Even those who once adored her now stood in silence. She turned to Ethan, clinging to a final sliver of hope. You can't leave me. I'm your wife. We made vows." Ethan drew the same white envelope from his suit jacket, the one he had brought prepared. He held it up in front of her. "This is the annulment agreement," he said, his voice cool and steady. "And I've already signed it." The entire room seemed to hold its breath. Celeste gently rested her hand on her son's shoulder. "Let's go, Ethan." As they turned and walked away, Ellie stood alone, surrounded by chandeliers and glittering gowns. She had once been the center of attention, the star built on control and appearances. Now it had all collapsed right in front of everyone. A week after Ellie's wedding, I woke up in my modest Boston apartment. No wedding flowers, no distant violin melodies, no judgmental glances or hushed remarks. Just me and silence. My phone buzzed softly on the nightstand. I glanced at the screen.
Mom.
The 9th call in 3 days. Yeah, I didn't answer. I'd heard enough, in that conference room, in that reception hall, and throughout a lifetime of quiet tolerance. I didn't need a half-hearted apology or a performative hug. I didn't need them pretending to be a picture-perfect family just to maintain appearances. That afternoon, while making coffee, a message came through. "Mom, I know you're upset. I can't undo the past, but I want to see you. Just dinner, the two of us." I stared at the screen for a long time. The old version of me, the me from a few years ago, would have said yes without hesitation. I would have picked out a nice outfit, arrived on time, smiled politely, and tried to find lighthearted topics to keep things pleasant. I would have held on to some faint hope that I'd hear her say, "I'm proud of you," or simply say my name with real affection. But that girl didn't exist anymore. I set the phone down. No reply.
No anger.
Just no longer needed. That evening, I walked along the Charles River. Small lights hung from the railings, their glow reflecting across the still water. The crisp early autumn air carried the scent of the breeze and the faint laughter of passing strangers. I sat on a stone bench and pulled an old photograph from my wallet. A family picture from Christmas, when I was 16. Ellie stood in the middle, wearing a bright red dress, grinning from ear to ear. Mom sat beside her, hand resting proudly on Ellie's shoulder.
Me?
I stood off to the side, half hidden behind the Christmas tree. I looked at the photo for a long while, then carefully folded it and tucked it back into my bag. I didn't need to force myself into a picture I was never meant to be part of. Another call came in, this time from my father, Robert. I answered, not because I wanted to, but because I knew he wouldn't call unless it truly mattered. "Mary," he said, his voice rougher and slower than usual, "I'm not good with words."
You know that.
I said nothing. I just listened. "But that day when you spoke up and your mother finally saw who Ellie really was, I think, For the first time in her life, she understood how alone you've been. A long pause. Whether you forgive us or not, I just want you to know I was wrong. And I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know. I closed my eyes.
No te ars. No viternis.
Just a quiet sense of peace. Thank you, Dad, I said softly. But I don't need an apology anymore. I just need freedom. That night, I went home and took the family photo album off the shelf. I didn't burn it, didn't tear it up. I simply placed it in a box, locked it, and set it on top of the wardrobe. An era had ended, and I no longer needed to revisit it. The next morning, I booked a trip to Maine. A trip I'd always wanted to take, but never allowed myself to because of family obligations or other invisible pressures. This time, I chose me. I didn't need their forgiveness. I didn't need their validation. And most importantly, I didn't need their love to feel worthy. Because now I understood, my worth doesn't come from anyone else's eyes. It comes from how I see myself. Family may be where we start, but it isn't always where we belong. Real family consists of those who respect you, listen to you, and never make you fight just to be acknowledged. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is walk away, not to escape, but to discover yourself. Mary's story is a powerful reminder that not everyone born under the same roof will offer you the love and respect you deserve. Sometimes, protecting your peace means letting go of relationships you once believed were unbreakable. Growth doesn't always come from being embraced. It comes the moment you walk away, without needing an apology. In real life, choosing yourself isn't selfish. It's an act of bravery and liberation. What did you think of Mary's journey and the decisions she made? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to follow the channel for more heartfelt, true-life family stories.